All right, the floor is yours, Melissa. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Melissa Falkenham. I'm running our inaugural Ask an Ambassador conversation today. We'll be here until about 3 o'clock. This is going to be, I have a lot of questions for everyone, for our ambassadors, but it is informal. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat or just speak up, raise your hand. Sam will be monitoring the chat for us today. And yeah, so I'll do introductions first and then we'll go through. This will be recorded like the other sessions for registered participants in the future. To introduce myself first, my name is Melissa Falkenham. I'm the manager of groups and tours at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. And we're showing everyone our favorite mask or our favorite radio code. So this is my favorite mask. It's a Tom Bin. It's not beautiful, but I can wear it for 8 hours a day when I'm in the office. So I don't know about the rest of you, but that's what matters to me right now. So we'll go through. Laura, why don't you start? Share us your name, role, organization, and your favorite mask or radio code.
Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Brooks. I work at the Museum of Photographic Arts in San Diego as the Visitor Engagement Administrative Associate. Yes, it's a lot of syllables. Basically, I manage the bridge between the front of house staff, which I was once, and the newly merged department of the Education Department. I brought 2 masks today because I wanted to. This is our work-sponsored mask from an image that we own, and I just think it's absolutely hilarious. And then my other favorite mask is a Beauty and the Beast mask that my quilting friends very kindly made for me.
Thanks, Laura. Sam, will you go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Huang. I am the manager of guest services over at Grounds for Sculpture, which is a sculpture park located in Hamilton, New Jersey. My favorite mask is a little related to my place of work. It's a botanical mask. And again, like you mentioned, Melissa, comfort is super important. This is pretty much the only one I can wear all day long.
Absolutely. Doug?
Hi, everyone. I'm Doug Buchanan. I'm the Vice President of Membership, Brand, and Guest Relations for COSI, the Center of Science and Industry in beautiful downtown Columbus, Ohio. It's a lovely fall day here, a little overcast, but not too bad. I oversee COSI's marketing team, which we call the brand team, our guest relations team, our call center, and our membership team. They're all a lot smaller than they used to be, but we are a small but mighty team, as one of my colleagues likes to say. So hello to everyone. It's great to see some of you again. I'm sorry we're not in Cleveland, Ohio, but this is also fantastic. And my favorite mask is one that was made for me by well, I'm a space nerd, and I'm not alone here at COSI in that regard. So our executive administrative assistant made this. Oh no, there it is. Okay, I don't know if you can see this. It's a mask that she custom made. Rebecca Larson custom made these, and it's covered with NASA mission patches. So that's my favorite one right there. It's also very comfortable. Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks. Jennifer?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jennifer Padilla. I am the Senior Director of Operations over at the San Diego Natural History Museum it's really hot in San Diego right now. We're having another heat wave. So hopefully this is the last one of the year for us. But my favorite mask this is my gems and minerals. So I'm a gems and minerals nerd. And so this has some pretty gems and minerals on it. It's actually made by one of our coworkers. She started making masks and selling them on Etsy. So, what better way to be ingenuitive in this, day and age. So everybody in the museum has a design of hers. So, and they're very comfortable as well. So happy to be here and happy to see all of you virtually.
Thanks. Dana?
Hi, I'm Dana Lowless. I am guest services manager for Andrew Jackson's Hermitage, and I also just acquired the volunteer coordinator position as well. I elected not to show a mask today because unfortunately we are mostly frontline management staff at the moment. So I have to wear that mask all day long, and I get to tell people they don't have to wear it while they socially distance themselves. So I chose not to wear mine, but I wanted to share my favorite radio call, and it's kind of a double one. The first is we have a radio code called the butterfly. And so whenever you hear someone call that there is a butterfly, you immediately think that it's this beautiful creature that's fluttering across the property. Well, butterfly is our code for snake. And then we have another one, which is called a striped butterfly. If you hear striped butterfly, it means there's a skunk. So those are my two favorite radio calls.
Those are amazing. It's always good to be reminded of the challenges of working outdoors mostly rather than indoors.
Oh no, the snakes come in. Snakes come in.
I'll have more questions about that, I think, later. Katie, last but not least.
Yeah, I mean, I understand working in a historic house museum. You have a lot of unknowns. I'm Katie Kapczynski. I work at Vizcaya Museum and Gardens in Miami, Florida. My favorite mask I love because I think it reminds me of like pop art, and I think it's cute, but it embarrasses anyone that I'm out with. That's this one. And the other thing is I have to be careful because I've worn it upside down twice, but anyways, that's my favorite mask. Did I answer all the questions?
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to start out simple. If one of you would take this, what is a VEX ambassador?
I'll take that one. This is Jennifer over in San Diego. Yeah. In the field all over the place, from guest services to operations, who are basically amplifying the messages and the resources that VEX has, sharing out about the conference, sharing out about any kind of educational opportunities, the memberships within kind of our own regions. But, you know, as we're doing everything virtually, I'm sure we've hit other people that are not in our regions, but it seems like several of us have some regional groups similar to VEX. We have one in San Diego that we call the Visitor Services Collaborative, and it's basically what it sounds like, just a whole bunch of visitor services people, managers and such, getting together, talking best practices, struggles, successes, etc. And the ambassador program is really to help, again, amplify that message of VEX and bring more people into the fold, because the more the merrier, the more viewpoints and situational learning we can get from each other, from people working in museums to at historical homes in the outdoors. We want to know about all of those challenges because they all help to feed this incredible kind of database that's being generated of best practices and resources. So everybody jump in if I missed anything.
Well, just to piggyback on what you said, Jennifer, you're a great example of an ambassador because you actually recruited me into the national group as well as being an ambassador. So the important thing is you can tell when Jennifer's talking that she's really passionate about the group. And so that's the important thing to show as an ambassador, is to be passionate, because that's how you're going to get more.
What made you volunteer to be an ambassador, Laura? What brought you in?
Again, it was Jennifer's passion. We were having a get together for the collaborative, sort of a happy hour at one of the bars. And it was May or something in 2018. So she was selling the conference hard. She had flyers, she was telling us about all the sessions. And looking at one of the sessions that they had in 2018 was, I forget the exact title now, but it was about the importance of being bilingual and have multiple cultures in museums. And being 18 miles from the Mexico border, that's a really important thing for us to do in San Diego. And so I initially actually applied as a scholarship for the diversity and inclusion program and was accepted. And then the next year I was so desperate to go again. And Jennifer was like, well, you know, if you're an ambassador, you get included, right? So here I am 2 years later, still an ambassador.
That's amazing. I like that story. Sam, maybe you could expand, talk a little bit about your ambassador supported network in your area.
Yeah, definitely. So my area is the Delaware Valley area, which is sort of like the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and New Jersey as well. For me, really what it was I've been talking to all these other organizations for so long already, even before joining VEX as an ambassador, that it just made sense to kind of officially bring everyone together and make it an official group. For me, really, the benefit was that even before COVID-19, this was a way to kind of piggyback off other people's ideas, kind of get their thoughts about what worked at their organizations, what didn't work. And especially now, like it was so important, like back in June when things seemed like they were going okay and that we might reopen, it was great to just get information from everyone else about what they were struggling with too. And finding out that we weren't all alone, I think that's the biggest thing, is that someone has your back and someone has experience that you might not have. And then you can also give your experience and tell everyone, you know, everything will be okay.
Does anyone else, piggybacking on that, have a good example of how their networks have helped support them, whether in COVID times or before?
Melissa, I'll go. You know, I think one of the ways that I've tried to support VEX in the past couple of years, I've not been involved with VEX for too long, but just for a couple of years now. Here in Ohio, there are organizations on a couple of different scales. Right here in Columbus, there is a group of folks who work in visitor services, actually not just for museums, but also for at Nationwide Arena, which is our large arena where the Columbus Blue Jackets play Major League Hockey, and other organizations around Columbus that aren't necessarily cultural entities per se, but have a stake in the guest relations business, often a substantial stake. So I've shared information about VEX through that group as well, and also with our statewide museum network, which I'm sure many of you, probably all of you have. We have the Ohio Museums Association, which is a really vibrant state museum association, and that's been a terrific network to plug into. I was the former past president of the board of OMA, so I know all those folks are super passionate museum people, and that was a great kind of ready-made network to share VEX with. I remember when I first got an email about VEX, maybe a couple of years ago, started asking around my colleagues here in Columbus, you know, who knows about VEX, who's been to the conference before, anybody know anything? And most people were not familiar with VEX. So that was the opportunity right then and there to help to change that.
Dana, I saw you unmuted yourself. Did you want to add to that or no?
I was going to say, I am probably in the minority in this because I went to a conference in 2018. It was the first conference. I've only been in the museum industry for about 6 years. And I loved the fact I'd looked everywhere. I'd scoured the web to find a group of people who did the kind of jobs that we do in our organization. And all you find are hotels or, you know, some of the larger institutes. And there's nobody that can relate to you on a smaller level. And so when I went to the first conference, I came away just stunned of all of the information that I got, that I'd been seeking. And so when I applied to be an ambassador, I was excited to be accepted because not only did I get a group of people in the ambassador corps who I could reach out to with questions, who had knowledge or knew someone who had knowledge, but then I could take that back home and start that in my own area. Unfortunately, I joined in 2019 at the end there, and we were supposed to be starting our first group meeting right as we got shut down for COVID, and we just have not been able, everybody's on a different wavelength and opening and closing, so I haven't been able to create my internal group here, but I rely so much on the VEX group and the VEX conference folks for information. I have reached out to them. I use all of the boards to get questions answered, and it's so wonderful because it's people who have the same kind of issues that you're having. You know, you're not talking about a guest who got a room that's bad. You're talking about someone who came through your museum and had a horrible experience, and now you can figure out why, and other people have had it. And that's kind of what I like about being an ambassador, is that I don't feel alone. And before, I felt like I was doing this on my own.
I agree. I think that's the most wonderful thing about coming to these conferences. It's like you think that you're the only one with this like unique problem, and then you're like, oh, everyone is trying to figure it out. Like there's no magic bullet that I'm missing. So I definitely felt that way as well. I was wondering, for those of you that have more established networks in this time of COVID, how, well, as Dana said, everything is kind of in flux. How have you changed how you're connecting and keeping in touch when I don't think any of us are meeting in person or on the same time schedule as we had in the past? If you've had any success or challenges with that.
Our group in San Diego here has definitely, like our engagement has definitely gone down. As someone who was kind of more or less kind of leading the charge on that group, I unfortunately just got, I've never been more busy at work during this time. I take care of the facility and the building, and we have not necessarily we've closed to the public, but we have other operations at the Natural History Museum that we do beyond guest experience. So we've been open this entire time on a staff level. So I've just been crazy and have not been able to foster any type of formal meetings. However, our email network is still strong, and that's kind of where the engagement has been lately, is just people firing out emails to our email list, and the responses come flying in. So it's still a very strong group. Unfortunately, furloughs in the industry because of the situation, but it's still a very strong group virtually. And I think they actually, without me, did a Zoom meeting and got together over like a virtual meeting, which is fantastic. And I think in San Diego, things are definitely starting to open up, and a lot of institutions are getting, they're either open now or are looking to open in the new year. So I definitely foresee some meetings happening to help everybody cope with the difficulties of opening, especially from a frontline perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that. Going by what Jennifer said, a lot of it is just obviously virtual and like lots of Zoom meetings and things like that. But what we did last week was actually a few of our staff went on a little field trip to another botanical garden. It was one we had been speaking with virtually before all of this had happened, and we had never gotten a chance to visit. But it was nice to kind of go walk around on our own, do a little self-guided visit, take a look at all the signs and the new protocols that they had put in place, and then speak with them, socially distant, of course, in person at that place. And that felt like a really nice connection because, you know, we had been talking with them. We never met face to face, but like actually seeing them, seeing where they work. It was really welcoming, and it made me like, you know, really hopeful for the future that we can all get together one time soon.
I'll say that here in Columbus, we've been having regular biweekly meetings with our Convention and Visitors Bureau called Experience Columbus. And we work with them for decades, but we've never been this close to our CVB as we have been over the past few months. They organized a call early on in COVID when a lot of cultural institutions here in the city were closing down, with a travel sentiment researcher to share research about current travel sentiment. And it was so great. It was COSI and our CVB, the Experience Columbus group, and then all the cultural organizations in the city. So museums, but also performing arts. And it was so great that we said, let's do this every 2 weeks. Let's come back together every 2 weeks. So we've kind of formed this mutual support group. And it's been great. I've talked to people that never talked to or haven't talked to in years. So that's been one of the silver linings of this whole thing is the togetherness that's come out of it.
We've spoke about some challenges staffing wise a bit, or alluded to them. How are you all taking care of yourself, taking care of your team, navigating this, especially with reopening challenges and reopening in COVID and everyone feeling uncomfortable about masks, mask wearing, all new procedures?
Oh, I'll take this one. So we opened partially in June. Visitors could come up, go out and see the grounds, but they couldn't tour any of the facilities. We have recently started doing tours through the house again, which has been great. Nashville has a mask mandate. You must wear a mask. And I am at the front line scheduling people into the house. And so it's my job to convey that information. And we decided as a company, the best way to handle that was to not say Nashville is requiring you to wear a mask, because when they think it is something that is other than the institution, they tend to get a little bit upset. So we found a way to say it is our policy that you need a mask on to go into the house. If you don't want to wear a mask, you're welcome to tour the property. And people aren't angry about that. They're excited that they don't have to wear the mask while they're walking around. So there's not been a lot of pushback since we've been approaching it from that angle. However, I lost all of my staff. I picked up the volunteers who I can't bring back in, who are contacting me constantly. And I don't worry about myself as much as I worry about what is happening with my staff. Now, I'm very fortunate that I have a wonderful group of people who have all reached out to me. And they've all said to me, look, it's got to the point where I have to find another job. But as soon as you're available to hire me back, I'm coming back, because I love what I do and I love where I work. And so building that relationship one-on-one with your employees is probably one of the biggest things that you can do, because they're struggling on a level that we aren't struggling, and they don't know what's going to happen because it is a difficult time to get a job. And my biggest fear is we're going to open back up the visitor center, and I'm going to have all new staff that I'm going to have to train on procedures that we don't even have in place yet. So that's a little bit scary. But we do try to do at least bi-weekly communications with staff. And we also tried to do some games with them or movies with them via Teams. So that's been good too.
Dana, we actually do the exact same thing, and that's what I was going to talk about, is that we know that they're super stressed out, and our guest services staff right now is so stretched out. And just remembering that there's fun things. So like my coworker Mark has a game called Concept, which is basically a guessing game. And someone sets it up in the morning, and the rest of the staff have all day to try to guess what it is. And there's a scorecard and everything. And it's something so simple. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, you take 5 minutes out of your day, you kind of look at the game board and you try to guess, and it kind of brings that sense of camaraderie back. And like you said too, like being as transparent as possible with our staff is the main thing that we're trying to focus on, because you're right, like, you know, anything could change any day. You know, we were all furloughed so quickly, and I think that fear is in the back of their head again, and, you know, in terms of our future. So letting them know as soon as possible, hey, right now, your jobs are safe, you're good, thank you for all your help. And just reminding them of that and making sure that they actually take the days off that they need to take off, because it is a lot working 8 hours a day, reminding people about masks, reminding people of all the protocols are in place. It gets to you. So just constant reminders, even like the most little thank you at the end of the day is really helpful.
I could speak to this a lot. We had we had some pretty major morale issues early on. So we reopened in May, and it was like before, you know, almost anyone. And since that time, I cannot tell you how many times the county regulations have changed, from you have to wear a mask to you can only wear a mask in the gardens, to you can't take pictures here, but you can take pictures if you're wearing a mask. Like, who wants to do that? Like, all sorts of things. And it changes almost weekly. So we went a different route and blame the county, because people will get mad at us if it's us. So we just say, it's out of our hands, it's the county, we're so sorry, because it's just something we can't control. And for us in Miami, it's hot and people don't want to wear a mask, and they just refuse to listen to the regulations. So we have to really enforce it, and it can get challenging. And I think frontline staff were starting to feel like they were policing or enforcing these policies that should be followed anyways. The other thing is, we transitioned our admissions team with our museum educators. And so when they transitioned, it was because, again, of the county regulations. We couldn't do public tours, or school groups weren't coming. So we just combined them to be kind of a big customer service team. And that transition didn't go over so well, I think, because in the beginning we were saying, this is temporary, we're doing what we can to keep your positions. But when it seemed like it wasn't temporary any longer, we had to kind of deal with it because the morale was so low. So we ended up doing a series of things, starting with like a listening session with all the managers for frontline staff, where we just heard out what their concerns were. And then we took from that just the ideas that they gave, like, we need plexiglass barriers, or we need this or that, or whatever. So we went and made all those changes pretty quickly so that they could see we were hearing them out. And then we changed their job description. We kept the titles the same, but we changed the job description so that the expectations were known across the board. And it was to give clarity to what we want from them in this new kind of role. And then since then, we've done like a scavenger hunt where we created it based on the site, and we were trying to combine the teams. We've done a couple other like fun, like evening at Vizcaya just for the frontline staff, and it's potluck style. So all of those things, you know, 3 months later, they're doing really well, and they're more excited about work. The anxiety's gone. So it was a lot of work, but it really paid off.
What is something that all of you have learned during this time that you didn't know before pre-pandemic? So January, what's something that you've now known going through all these changes?
I'll toss something out. I think for us, it's just the realizing how fast you can actually move to change things when you really have to. We struggled with for several years. And here's the example. When we reopen, we're closed. We're going to reopen November 20th. When we with their digitally purchased ticket on their phone, and our team member can scan it right there at the doors, and they're done. They can go in the building. They're finished. That was like our dream for years before this. And our ticketing system vendor said, no, it's not possible because our system doesn't have the API, can't, you know, it's not going to work for all these reasons. Well, we had to figure it out because I don't have the frontline team that we used to have. It's much, much smaller. We could not do things the old way because we just don't have the team anymore. So we found a developer friend of ours who's done a lot of work for us, and he figured it out. And within about 2 months of hard work, we had figured out how to scan tickets at the door. And our exhibits team built these great, like mobile, we call them pods, like a mobile register with a plexiglass shield and a scanner sitting in a little cradle. And you just come up and scan your tickets. And, you know, it was sort of like this, it took this like wartime footing for us to finally push through. And of course, having the building closed and being able to focus on things. I think that's the lesson for me is it really is amazing how much you can accomplish in a very short amount of time when your survival depends on it.
Yeah, definitely. And what I've learned is actually how resilient our staff is and how adaptive they are to all the new changes that we've been making. Like Doug said, like these regulations and capacity levels and all that, it changes like week by week. And like right now, like the COVID cases are going up again. And like the way that we've told our staff, they're just like on it immediately. There's no other questions. They're just like, okay, what do we have to do? How can we do this? And let's go. And it's really, it's nice to see how resilient they are and how quickly and how much they, what's the word? How invested they are into our organization where, you know, they're just frontline staff. I think so many people write off frontline staff as just going in, clocking in and getting a paycheck. And that's not the case at all. Like they care for our organization and they're ready to kind of bring us into the future.
I think for me, the biggest thing that we learned was that our jobs are in fact capable of being done remotely. So many people, including people in the education department, the educators who do site things, have wanted to be able to do their tasks from home for years. And when San Diego was in a higher tier, we were actually not allowed legally to come into our office and to gather, so we had to be able to work from home. So like Doug said, the swiftness in which they were able to figure that technology out was hilarious, honestly.
I was going to add too that I didn't realize how fickle the visitors can be until now. Something that is closed and they can't access, they had no interest in before. They would like blow you off and be like, no, I don't want to go see that. And now they come up and they're like, what, that's closed? I can't go in there. And so just navigating around that so that you continue to give excellent guest experience, yet you just are screaming in your head, you didn't want to see it before. That has been an interesting kind of dilemma for us.
Before I go on, does anyone in the audience have any questions that they wanted to ask, either to the group or to someone in specific?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, I'm Tasia. I was the Diversity Inclusion Fellow last year, and just wanted to say that it was an amazing experience. I took a lot of everything that I learned back to my institution, which unfortunately shut down a month afterwards. So it was, there's a reckoning in Los Angeles right now, even before COVID. My institution kind of started the domino effect of unionization and calling for more recognition of the role of the frontline staff. And their importance in an institution. And then also addressing inequalities, such as the fact that most of the diversity quotas, I guess, for an institution fall on the frontline staff. And that just means that there's a big disconnect between management and boards and the people who actually engage directly with the patrons of the institution. So I wanted to ask for everyone else, what kind of quote unquote progress have you seen, not just in your institution specifically, but in your cities in terms of getting recognition for frontliners and the inequalities that they experience in the museum field?
This is Jennifer in San Diego. I haven't necessarily felt a massive shift here in our city necessarily. I mean, in my neighborhood personally, we had some amazing demonstrations that I was shocked about how many people were involved and out there and making their voice be heard. So that was pleasantly surprising to me. But in my institution, I feel like there has been a deeper appreciation and for what it's worth of Frontline, because they were literally the ones that were going to have to face guests in a pandemic situation, and no one wanted to have anything to do with it beyond our group, and I think there was a better appreciation for that group, and there was more discussion about what they deal with, and I'm kind of like, guys, this is something they deal with daily. There's just an illness involved now, but this is not new for them. I mean, they are encountering people who are coughing all over the place anyway. This is not new. So it was an interesting few discussions that were had based on this realization that you're asking this group, who are the lowest paid in the building, to take on the biggest risk. Between them, our custodial crew, security, that group of people, lowest paid in the building, you're asking them to do the most. And so, there was no solution to that, but there was at least a recognition. So I feel like that's a step in the right direction, and I'm hopeful. But unfortunately, I have not seen a massive shift yet, at least here in our city, and then even in my institution, though we've done some actual work with IDEA. We've actually formed a committee, and it's not just a committee that I think is going to be shelved. It's something that now we're talking about at every staff meeting, every board meeting, our executive management team, IDEA, that committee and what they're doing and their progress is on every agenda. So I'm hopeful that it's not just, again, something that we say we do and okay, we have a committee that solves it, that it's more front of mind now. And I hope that continues and it doesn't get kind of shelved as some of these initiatives often do when it becomes a little passe and it's not as, in the news as much. So that's just my experience. I know everyone has more.
At COSI, actually, COSI has a long history of back of house team members moving into frontline roles during peak seasons. That is now when we reopen, is a permanent part of working at COSI. Every COSI team member is a front of house team member. We had 246 people back in March. When we reopen, we will have 88. So everyone will be cleaning toilets. Yours truly, absolutely no exceptions. So that is something that everybody will have a chance to do, and everybody is going to get coughed on. So it's going to be a learning experience and a really good one.
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, Sam, I keep cutting you off. You go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, so in our organization, it's been a long time coming, and it is hard being like one of the few people always asking about it, but I think finally it's come to fruition where, it's always been in the back of like the board's head and the executive management's head. But this year, finally, the board is creating its own DEI committee to pretty much overhaul Grounds for Sculpture's view and approach towards diversity. And a lot of that did come from like the frontline staff. Like Natalia, you mentioned, a lot of the frontline staff is pretty much makes up 80% of the diversity found in really any organization, just by default of being like the largest department most of the time in most organizations. So I think, you know, it's annoying being always the person to be talking about it, but it does catch people's ears, and like eventually, hopefully, like your board will listen and your management team will listen, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I so agree. I think, I mean, just this year I started writing articles on the importance of frontline staff, and because I felt convicted, because there's no one out there doing it, or very few, right? I think that we need to be the advocates for frontline staff, for, you know, people in these roles, because up until recently, they didn't receive a lot of appreciation. We didn't receive a lot of appreciation within the sector. That had been my experience, right? And I think we also need to be advocates for DEAI issues, because we're the ones seeing it and experiencing it, and we know the visitor the most. So, you know, I think that's just important for all of us to remember, especially if you're in a management position, that you should be an advocate for your team, for your visitor, for DEAI in your museum also.
Thanks. That was a great question. Does anyone else have any questions? We have a few more minutes.
Just wanted to ask again, because here in LA, we're still at the highest tier of COVID, so none of our museums and very few of our institutions are open. Basically, what I've seen happening now is that the large cultural institutions, MoCA, the Broad, LACMA is its own crazy thing. So what I'm seeing now is the shift from public institutions going more towards private institutions. Private galleries are opening, but because they're private and smaller, they're able to allow people inside and view those works. And I feel like in the future, because when we do open up, Los Angeles is going to be one of the museum capitals of the world. We have the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, one of the largest museums, going to be opening up soon. The Korean American Museum will be opening up, also a huge museum. LACMA is literally tearing down every building on its campus and building one giant, ugly thing that will house its collections from now on. So the museum landscape is going to be changing. But I'm thinking that there's just a lot going on. To sum it up, I guess I'm just crying out for help. I'm like trying to figure it out, guys. Like, what's going to happen to us when all of this is over? Because it's not going to be the same at all. Like what LACMA is doing, what's been there for 60 years is not going to be there anymore. And we're going to be left with something that some people are going to absolutely hate. The fact that museums are unionizing, the fact that, you know, greater calls for diversity from the rich board members are going to hate that. So I guess what I'm asking is, how do you keep sane and keep hope for the future when all of this is going on around you? Because I'm just like looking out my window and I'm like, oh, shoot.
There is a lot going on for sure, but I think I'm very hopeful that it's going in the right direction. Like, the sector is changing a lot, yes, but probably faster than it ever has before. And in 10 years, it's going to look so different, but I'm really optimistic. I think there's a lot of positive changes. I mean, the focus on DEAI has never been this strong. And it's breaking down walls and changing the landscape. Yeah. So I I choose to remain optimistic. I think it's a good thing.
Thanks. I think it's 3 o'clock, so I think we'll end on there. I would just say that your questions, everyone is grappling with. I hear it a lot in VE, so I hope you stay in touch, and because we're all trying, like, there's no good answer to it, but I think we're all trying to figure it out, and those are hot button issues. So I hope you stay connected and don't lose hope, because we're all trying to figure that out as well, and how to go next and how to do things well. If anyone is interested in being an ambassador or have any questions, I just put the email engagement@visitorexperience.group in the chat. So please reach out, or feel free to reach out to any of us individually. We're happy to answer any questions you have. Krista already added the links for the next session, so I hope to see you all there. And thank you all for joining us today. It was great to talk and see you virtually.